Join me today as we ponder why exactly is Highlander 2 such a terrible sequel and or movie. This is the Geek Cabal channel. My name's Bobbie, and today we're going to be talking about why exactly why exactly Highlander 2 turned out the way it did, and why people generally dislike it. So, if you haven't seen the Highlander movies and you want to know what I'm talking about, I've done a video for Highlander 1 and for Highlander 2. They'll both be linked up here in the top. So, excuse me. So, the first and probably most obvious reason is that you have to basically retcon the first movie, or you've got to go some places that you really just don't need to go to try to make this movie make any sense, because the first movie has a very definitive ending. And it could be argued that there should be no sequels, because the movie it's over. Like, that's it. That's the story. Now, to me, though, Highlander 2 represents an attempt at a sequel and trying to stay within the lines of what they had established while doing a few other things. And while attempting to do that, they end up creating just this not so great movie. Very terrible sequel. And what I mean there is, like, there was no reason to even attempt to explain why the Immortals are the way they are. Like, just they can just be, just stick with Connor's explanation. It's a kind of magic. That's it. That's all you really need to know. So, trying to explain that, because you need to have a source for new Immortals, and so you've got to, like, you can see why they did some of the things they did, but it all stems from the whole, hey, let's make a sequel. Now, to my opinion, Highlander 3 is a better sequel. It still has to, like, fudge the end of the first movie, and I think it does so in such a way that's it's okay. It's within the realm of, okay, we're gonna make a sequel. I got it. Kind of like from Aliens to Alien 3. There's no possible way at the end of Aliens that the eggs got on board the ship. Like, there's no missing time. There's no nothing. The only thing would be if a drone that we don't see comes aboard with the Queen carrying some eggs. Like, that didn't happen. So, but if you don't, like, the franchise is kind of stuck, because you got to have aliens somehow, and they got nuked at the end of Aliens. And so that's one of the things I don't think people heavily fault Alien 3 for attempting that. I think they dislike Alien 3 for other reasons. But Highlander 2, you're kind of in the same situation. Like, you just can't go forward. And I think without Highlander 2, I don't think we would have had Highlander 3, and more importantly, Highlander 4 in the TV series. Now, I could be wrong on that, because the TV series also had to kind of, like, somewhat retcon the end of the first movie. It had to go with, like, all the events took place, it just wasn't the Gathering, and Connor wasn't the last guy. And then Highlander Endgame, which is part 4, attempts to kind of reconcile all the events, except for Highlander 2, into, like, a cohesive, kind of tries to kind of fudge everything together into a cohesive unit. And for the most part, I think it works. And more importantly, it doesn't make the same mistake that the other movies keep making. At the end of the movie, Duncan's not the last one left. Like, it doesn't claim to be the Gathering or anything. This is just some guy that's got a grudge against Connor and decides to then take it out on Duncan once Connor's dead. Spoiler alert for part 4. I think the best approach would have been similar to basically what the TV show did, would have been to be like, hey, so that wasn't quite the gathering. Just say that Connor got, a particularly high surge of power because the Kurgan had killed all kinds of other immortals. And so he thought, that was the one. Just say as a one-off thing where the few that are in the movie felt the draw like it was the gathering, that something happened to pull them together. Don't explain what the something is. Just say it happened. It's magic. You don't need to explain it. So, just the core concept of there being of the sequel already puts them behind the 8 ball. But then the fact that they actually try to come up with a reason for everything, because they were like, I'm sure they were also like, well, we kind of got ourselves in a corner here. How do we have more immortals, but also have it make sense? And that leads down the path of actually explaining things, or trying to, and it doesn't work. So the attempted explanation is just not great. And really, like, that's definitely one thing they just totally ignore in the other movies. So that's a big part of why it's bad. But then the other big part is, like, it's trying to be like 2 different movies. It's trying to be a follow-up to Highlander, but also this weird sci-fi, there's an energy shield around the Earth, and we've got to bring down the energy shield, and then, like, parts of it are rooted in the end of the first movie, where Connor's like, I can, understand people all over the world and everything, and so, trying to fix a global calamity makes sense, makes, good use of his powers and everything. It's just that it's so bizarre and just doesn't make any sense, and so much of the movie is dedicated to that baloney plot, when the first movie doesn't have anything like that. The first movie is, don't let the Kurgan kill you, some flashbacks, will the police lady figure it out? Okay, now that she has, now what's Connor going to do about it? It all centers around the whole, he's an immortal, like, in the gathering, and, it centers, like, there's no just random extraneous plot line in there. It's all to deal with that. Highlander 3, same thing. Highlander 4, or Highlander Endgame, same thing. I mean, Endgame should be, I know it's a couple sequels later, but, like, Endgame is more in line of what the sequel should be. It centers still around the immortals and them doing their thing, but, like, maybe there's a guy that holds a grudge against them out there somewhere. Maybe there's a particularly evil immortal out there somewhere. Maybe the Watchers have gone off the reservation again. Like, that's where the sequels should have gone if we were to buy into the fact there should be sequels. And so you have these 2 forces where, on the one hand, you're having to explain things that don't need to be explained, but you're also having to, like, put in this other plot that has to be given its due, and the 2 plots are kind of competing with each other, and it just makes just this mess, It'd be like, I don't even know if I can think of a good analogy here. It'd be like if in the Terminator movies, let's say the first Terminator movie, it'd be like if Sarah did get fired from her job towards the beginning, and, like, between there and the end of the movie, she's trying to get her job back or something. Like, just some other plot line that is totally unnecessary, just does nothing for the movie, and just burns up time, and just throws in a bunch of things that we don't need. Like, we don't need any of the S.H.I.E.L.D. plot line. I mean, take it all out. Just have General Katana show up, And obviously I'd throw out all the baloney with them either being aliens or from the past also. But, yeah, just some enemy from Connor's past shows up, wants to take him out. Boom, done. That's your plot. Like, you don't need anything else. Throwing a bunch of flashbacks. The random sex scenes the Highlander movies have. Maybe a friend or 2 somewhere. A reason that him and General Katana are enemies. And you got it. That's it. That's all it needs. as Endgame proved, like, that's it, you know? Or like however many seasons the show had, because that's like basically what every episode of the show was. Oh, here's this other immortal that Duncan knows. He's either a good guy or he's a bad guy, or both. And maybe there's some other immortal involved. And by the end of the episode, someone's probably going to lose their head, and that's it. Like, just stretch it out to 2 hours. So, it tried to be too many things. And it suffered because of it. Like I said, literally everything with the S.H.I.E.L.D. plotline could be stripped out of the movie. Change a few lines. Yeah, you're going to lose a lot of movie. But, like, that's all you need for the movie, then put in more material involving Connor and General Katana. Obviously, I'd take out having Ramirez come back. That's just weird. But, yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do. And so, then on top of all this, from everything I've ever heard, there were massive amounts of executive meddling, where I guess the producers didn't trust the director to edit the final cut of the movie, or they stepped in at some point. Things were going over budget. I think a lot of it was filmed in Argentina for some reason, if I remember correctly. And you just had a bunch of just extraneous things happening outside the movie that all conspired. But again, looking at the final product, I don't think they had the pieces to make a good movie, to make a good sequel. I still think the movie's an okay movie. It's 5.5 or so, 6 maybe. If I just ignore the fact that it's a sequel to a much better movie, similar to The Force Awakens. In and of itself, decent movie, but Episode 9 of Star Wars, no thank you. So, so executive meddling did not help, and that's why there's 2 different cuts of the movie. But even there, it's not like the other cut really solves all the problems. It still tries to explain that which should not be explained. So, yeah, I mean, there's just a lot going on in this movie that just did not, it just wasn't really going to work for it. So, that's, I suppose I should also mention, even bringing back Ramirez is just kind of weird. There's no precedent in the first movie for us to think that's possible. Because if Connor had that ability, you think he would have brought him back in the modern day, like maybe to help him fight the Kurgan, or to give him a pep talk or something. I don't know. So it's not like the first movie didn't say that it couldn't happen, because again, it is magic. So sure. And I hate to be like, well, they explain too much, then be like, but then without explanation this happens. But well, it's like with the Force in Star Wars. We're given some ground rules. Obi-Wan explains that he can, affect the weak-minded. We see that there's a limited precognition, and we know that telekinesis is part of it. And we see all these play out in A New Hope. So in Empire, whenever Luke concentrates and pulls his lightsaber out of the snow with the Wampa coming after him, we know that's possible, or something similar to that, because we saw Vader force choke Admiral Motti, which had to be telekinesis. We don't see the exact same feat, but it's a logical extension of what we saw. Now, the whole seeing spirit Obi-Wan, that's a little bit of a stretch. That didn't really happen in the first movie. We did hear Obi-Wan tell Luke from beyond, trust the Force, not the computer system, essentially. So again, it's a somewhat logical extension of what we saw. If he could speak to him, maybe he can appear to him. It's not a huge logical leap. And then, Luke having visions of what's going to happen on Cloud City, or what is happening on Cloud City. Again, we saw something like that whenever Luke is being trained against the droid, the blaster droid, because, it's precognition is what it is. It's being able to anticipate where the droid's going to be. So that's a limited ability to see the future. So then, once his powers are greater, being able to see more of the future, beyond just the thing right in front of him. Again, it's a logical extension of what's already come to pass. Connor just yelling Ramirez, and Ramirez showing up in Scotland instead of like where Connor is also. These things are not logical extensions of anything we saw in the first movie. Now you can always retcon them in, which they did, kind of, but like they were not things that just make sense with what's in the first movie. So Ramirez coming back also, I mean, I don't know that it necessarily hurts the movie at that point, because it's kind of a selling point that Sean Connery's in it, because Sean Connery's usually gold, and he's pretty good in this one. I mean, at that point, like, you're already so far into the calamity, like, you may as well just be like, well, let's just bring Sean Connery back. I mean, he's popular, he's, great guy. Sure, why not? You can't make the movie worse at that point, and he doesn't. He probably improves the movie at that point. But then again, I'm a Sean Connery fan, so, So, yeah, that's the extent of just why Highlander 2 is just not great. Like, a lot of things conspired to just bring down this movie. But I think that they course corrected in the later movies. They completely ignore this one. 3 goes back to basically trying to be like 1. They had to come up with a way that there were other immortals without being like, oh, they're aliens or from the past or whatever, So they came up with something better, like, okay, well, this guy's trapped in a cave. Connor wasn't quite the last one. He's really powerful, but he wasn't the last one. And then, of course, naturally, for this guy to be a challenge, he's got to be powerful too. And I can't remember his name. But he had magic, like literal magic. So, and then that's a case of like, well, you already have the immortals, which are essentially magic. So having a guy that actually knows magic, that's not a huge logical leap. So he kind of makes sense. And then, of course, when he gets killed, his powers and knowledge transferred to Mario Van Peebles' character. So naturally, he now has the powers. Okay. And then 4, I think, is, more the sweet spot of, let's just basically have something similar to the first movie, only now it's like a personal grudge. It's not the Gathering. And, there's a bunch of other immortals. We're not even going to try. We're just going with the show logic, that there's plenty of them out there. This is just another episode in their lives here. But also the passing of the torch of Connor to Duncan, officially. So, that's why I think by Endgame they had ironed things out. And then they made Highlander the Source, which is just a dumpster fire. So, they just threw all that away. So, hopefully the Henry Cavill attempt coming up is better. But yeah, that's my take on why Highlander 2 is just bad as far as a sequel. I think it's okay as a movie, but it's bad as a sequel. So, anyway, that's all I've got on that one. So, let me know what you folks think down in the comments. Am I off my rocker? Is there some other reason I overlooked? Anything else out there? What do you think of Highlander 2 as a movie, but also as a sequel, and 3 and 4 in the show and all that, But, yeah, let me know down in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Sharing and commenting, the things that help us grow the channel. We always appreciate it. And, yeah, other than that, just remember, in the end, there can be only one.